Oh, you need that.
Okay. Okay, so we are going to get started, and welcome to a chirping, colorful review of web design usage. So we are going to talk about how we incorporate birds with colors for web design. And I'm Sara. I am a first-year master's student at the University of Michigan, studying information and data analytics, and this is Angela.
Hi.
She is also a first-year master's student studying user experience and design and getting a certificate in health informatics. This is Elissa. She is also a first-year master's student studying information and data analytics at the University of Michigan, and this is Valyn, also a first-year master's student studying user experience, research, and design, but she is also a bird expert and worked in aviculture for over 10 years. She's worked at the Brookfield Zoo, the Detroit Zoo, and the Shed Aquarium here in Chicago. So she is very passionate about our feathered friends, and we'll talk about how she uses birds as her inspiration for web design. So, if you don't already know, color theory is a way to organize colors into a logical structure. And the most commonly known structure of color theory is the color wheel, which helps us to see colors in relation to one another. So looking at the color wheel, we can see, for example, that red is similar to orange and purples. So the color circle is based on the primary colors. So that's red, yellow, and blue. And thank you. And the color wheel was originally developed by Sir Isaac Newton in 1666. And since then, scientists and artists alike have studied and designed numerous variations of this concept, and there's a lot of differences of opinion and debates about the validity of one format over another. And so that continues to provoke debate, but in general, it's just a very good way to see colors in relation to one another. So now we'll look a little bit more into the different color palettes. And so first we'll talk about the primary colors, which we've already mentioned are red, blue, and yellow. And these are the colors that are used to make secondary colors. So those are when two primary colors are mixed together, which are well known as purple, green, and orange.
And then the tertiary colors are for one primary color of either red, blue, and yellow, and then you pick one of the secondary colors to create the tertiaries. In terms of web design, when you're in Adobe or you're looking at a color palette, you can use the different RBGs and CMYKs. I just learned that RYB is for physical objects, and we usually use the Pantone matching system. So it's PMS. For the tints and tones and shades, when you're looking at the color palettes, you use it with the they have it in Adobe when you open up the color palettes, and you can use it with the black and the tints. So tints are the achromatic colors of white, gray, and black. When you use any of the primary, secondaries, or tertiary colors, you can pick one. For our example, we used red. When you add white, it's actually called tint. So it's more of a pastel color, so it turns out to be pink. And for a tone, you add gray into it, and so it becomes a darker maroon color. And then for shade, it's more like a shadow concept. So if you think of it in a logical term with physical objects, when we're walking around with the light, the shadow is black. So when we add it, it's going to be a darker color of maroon. So building it out of web development, here are a few websites that you can go on to if you're not great with colors. ColorMind is really great because it shows you all the palette colors of the different versions that you want with the hex colors, so that you can pull and copy and paste it into your codes. Colorful gives you the color palettes for the texts. So if you're not sure what backgrounds work or not, you can toggle around with the bars and you can see the hex numbers or the hex codes, and then they'll tell you if it's accessible or not for your websites. For Adobe Capture CC, you might need to have a login account for it, but they also have an additional aspect for providing you with the harmonies. So you can choose the different harmonies that we're going to show you eventually, and then you can also add it on to as an extension for your Chrome. So you can do it on your Chrome browsers for an eyedropper or color palette if you like something else on somebody else's website for a particular color, and they'll show you the hexes. And as well as if you have a MacBook, you can also go into the App Store and download the eyedroppers too, so you can use it for across platforms if you have a particular color from your photos that you want to use on your website. And now we're going to practice, and Valyn's going to start talking about birds, so you'll learn a lot of new fun facts that isn't really related to website development, but we can practice with the colors and the harmonies that we're going to introduce, and we'll have examples by Elissa for some websites that are do's and don'ts.
So yeah, I am not a color expert. I do not pretend to be, but I know a lot of different species of birds. So when I have an assignment that revolves around color selection or web pages, I will think of what emotion I want to evoke, and then I will pick a picture of that bird and I will throw it into the color pickers that Angela previously mentioned. And then I have a cheater's way of getting a color palette that is attractive and follows all the rules that we're going to talk about. So I'm going to start with the birds on the top row. The first is the red-crested turaco. It is actually the national bird of Angola. Turacos are one of the only families of birds where their colors actually contain the pigment that you're seeing. So that is actually a red and green bird. If you were to take one of its red feathers, for example, and put it in a glass of water, it would turn the water pink. It would actually flood out the colors. The eclectus parrot, which is the next one, that is actually a male and female pair. The female is on the left, the male is on the right. For many, many years, bird experts actually thought that these were two separate species, which made breeding them in captivity very difficult because they had a collection of all females and then a collection of all males, and they didn't realize it. So that is a level of it's called high sexual dimorphism, where there's a huge difference between how the male appears and how the female appears. And then the last bird is our golden pheasant. It is native to China. It is very popular in zoos and aviaries. The females are very drab brown, only the males are this color. And although it is that brightly colored, they're very hard to see in the wild because they're quite elusive, and despite how brightly colored they are, they blend in very nicely in the dense vegetative environment that they live in.
And so tying back into the colors, this is called the square harmony and the triad harmony. The triad harmony is only the pheasant because you can see for the triangle, wherever you rotate it on the color wheel, those are the three colors that you would combine it with as a palette. So the pheasant has the triads, whereas the other two has the square triads where the points meet.
Bottom row, we're going to start with the resplendent quetzal, native bird of Guatemala. You might see a green and red bird, but it's actually brown. The feather structure within the bird interacts with the light with such a way where it only allows green pigment to escape. With the kingfisher, which you'll see examples of other blues and birds that I'm going to show you, although that is a very vibrant and pretty blue, again, it's actually not. There is zero blue pigment in that feather. However, the tan feathers underneath, that is an actual coloration of the feather, and in this bird's case serves it quite well as a way of camouflage when it's hovering above water, and its intended prey in the water can't see the brown. It breaks up very nicely. And then this cute little bird at the end is a paradise tanager. As colorful as this bird is, it might be a surprise that males and females are both this color. Oftentimes females will be a little more dull during nesting because of the nesting responsibilities, and they want to be able to blend in. However, both male and female share in nest responsibilities, so they're just like, heck with it, we'll both be brightly colored. Although this bird is slightly smaller than a sparrow, they were collected quite a bit to use for ancient civilization headdresses. So you'll see these headdresses that are quite elaborate, and you have all these little feathers tacked on, and they all came from those little birds, and they're like this big.
So then these birds kind of have a split complementary harmony, which means it's got a primary color and a secondary color with a secondary complement. So wherever you rotate around for the color wheel, you'll be able to see that it matches a similarity of these kind of colors.
All right, so next we're going to talk about websites that probably, this one doesn't use colors as well as, we want it to. So links cars.
Uses them all.
Let's all agree that it has a lot of content and it has like a lot of moving image and colors that's used on this website. So they probably want it to go for the shock factor, right? And it's working. It's like everybody knows this website as how it is. But putting aside the other design choices that they made, let's just look at the colors. They probably want to use the square harmony if they like a lot of colors, right? Or split complementary. So if you're not trying to make this kind of website, let's just look at the ones that works, the square harmony. So I have two examples. First is Coachella. They uses red and blue and some green. And it's very similar to this little birdie right here. What's the name again?
Paradise Tanager.
Paradise Tanager. They use split complementary harmony, and it blends very nicely. And the bottom Nintendo website uses blue, red, yellow, and green, really the square harmony that they're using, and it blended really well. They uses grids to make sure that all the colors that they're using are matched together.
So if I wanted to work on a website that was maybe more soothing, I might think of some birds that are in cool tones and go for more of a single color theme. So the bird portion, we have the Victoria crowned pigeon and the hyacinth macaw. The Victoria crowned pigeon is actually the world's largest species of pigeon. It's about the size of a turkey, but it only weighs 4 pounds. So it's really big, but still really light. And it is in the same family as the pigeons that you see out in the street, very closely related. But I would probably argue the city pigeons are a little smarter. And then the hyacinth macaw, who's next to it, go blue, right, is the largest species of parrot. It has a wingspan of about 4 feet. So when its wings are open, wingtip to wingtip, that is 4 feet. And does anyone remember what I said about the color blue earlier on birds?
It's usually not the actual color.
Correct.
That out.
Yeah, so this bird is actually black. If it didn't allow for that pigment to escape, you would just see a plain black bird. Well, not plain, black is actually really pretty in feathers. Anyways, I digress. So yes.
And so then these kind of birds are closely matched with monochromatic harmony. As Valyn has mentioned, this is more of a cool color. So monochromatic can work for cools and warm colors. Warm colors are usually on the other side of the spectrum of the wheel. So this one for now is just the different shades of blue, basically.
And then with the bottom row, we have, starting closest to me, the silver-breasted broadbill. It's a very serenely colored bird that is native to Thailand, Myanmar, and Vietnam. Very slight sexual dimorphism between males and females in that the female looks just like the male, except there's a very faint silver ring around its neck. The violet starling, also called the amethyst starling or violaceous starling, there are lots of common names for this bird, is a very common African bird. And again, this lighting on the back, it's not really that purple color. It's actually more, I want to say that's more of like an olivey color. But with how the feathers interact with the light, releases this incandescent pigment. There's also, with its white belly, it serves as a form of camouflage, so when it is up in the trees, you can't really see it very well. And it's a bird that you don't typically see on the ground. Finally, one of my favorites is the lilac-breasted roller. This very vibrantly colored bird has a very interesting courtship display where it'll fly about 400 feet above the ground and then allow itself to pitch and roll or fall to the ground and just kind of spiral down, so the colors really flash, and then they will save themselves at the very last second before crashing into the ground and then do it again.
So these type of birds, we grouped it into analogous harmony. Analogous harmony has colors that are together, 2 to 4 of the colors in the color wheel. So for these, it's the purple and then the midnight purple blue and the light blue. So again, anytime you rotate it with 2 to 4 of the colors together, they're known as analogous harmony.
All right, so this I think most people know is Craigslist. And there's no clashing of colors, no usage of too many colors. In fact, there's no use of color harmony, like at all. I think it looks a little boring to me. So to avoid designing a website that looks like this, because I think Craigslist already took this as their trademark, so I don't know. Let's look at examples that uses blue, white, and gray color and to make it more like alive or more interesting. So down here, Hulu, I think uses monochromatic color harmony gradient and looks well blended and easy to the eyes. It is easier to get the colors right on the color picker when you're using the monochromatic harmony, because it's actually just like one color and you move the slider to choose like the shades or the tint. And then Canva up there uses analogous color harmony. They use a little bit of pink and purple to blend in with the blue and the green, just like the lilac breasted roller, and it looks really nice, really pretty. They're all next to each other on the color wheel.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so now to get into some more neutral birds, which you might think it might mean boring, but you can actually do a lot with the colors. But I'm going to talk about the bird portion. So the great egret is a very common bird. You can see them in the Chicago area if you ever are by any waterways. It's a very slow flyer. It'll only do 2 wing beats per second and can cover ground or air at about 25 miles an hour. Kind of what I said earlier with the amethyst starling, even though this is a solid white bird, it camouflages really well when it perches in trees. Those feathers, it doesn't turn the bird green, but it absorbs that green, and you wouldn't know that a 2.5 foot tall bird was sitting there. And then with the go-away bird, this is actually closely related to the red crested turaco that I showed you earlier. It is called the go-away bird because it has a call that sounds like a crying infant. And something that it is known to do in Africa is it'll follow hunters around, and right before the hunter goes for the kill, will call and scare the prey away and gets away, and then the hunters are just like, go away! I mean, this is a true story.
That's a baby.
It is, yeah, it's a baby. And then as far as the color goes, although it looks kind of drab, depending on how the light hits it, it can actually turn it into kind of these peachy, pinkish tones. So very pretty bird. And then, did you want me to go? Okay. And then finally, so you have this neutral color palette, and then you can do accents in the colors. Or with the colors, just give it a little bit of a pop. So with the king penguin, people hear penguins, they think black and white bird, whatever. But with king penguins, they have these really nice splotches of orange right behind the eye and above the chest. And this plays a lot in mate selection. In fact, a nasty group of researchers took a bunch of king penguins and covered those oranges with black, and wouldn't you know it, they weren't selected to breed that year by their potential mates. So it's thought to be very important in mate selection. And then with the lavender waxbill down here, very tiny bird again, but it has that pop of red. The thought behind that is if a predator were to go after this bird, it's going to focus more on the tail, which, although it's tragic for a bird to lose its tail, it's most likely to be able to get away, grow that tail back in, and recover.
And as you can see, we've been dressed up as accented harmony as well. Not that we purposely tried to, but Just to revisit, I had initially talked about achromatic harmony, so you can see this bird for the go away bird is a good example of black, gray, and white, which you can also do tints, shades, and the other color that I can't remember right now. But you can see that all kinds of harmonies isn't just focused on one type. You can actually combine them. So you can always think outside of the box, but if you want to sound smart to your clients, you can always use these harmony colors to talk about it with them for your website designs. And usually artists like to pinpoint something, so if you're interested in birds and you like a particular feather or a particular image, you can always base that off with the harmonies and go to the recommended color palette.
All right, so this is Yale School of Arts website. Yale, the actual university, Yale. So, granted, this website is a wiki where anybody that has a login can change their content. So, I feel like it's intentional in a way they want to make it like this. Like, it's probably for comedy or some other stuff. So, but we can agree that they don't have color harmony when they're making this, right? And have that. So in this admission section, they're using colors that may benefit from neutral harmony or like the accented harmony, since they have like neutral colors in the background, like black and white, and then some pop of color like red or green. So now let's look at some of the websites that use this color harmony successfully. Okay, so these are the two websites, and interestingly, we all dress neutral colors, so maybe this is probably why Raven and Zara,
But it's not Zara brand.
Yeah, not Zara. Yeah, they probably use a lot of like neutral harmony because it looks kind of clean, and you can direct your audience attention to what you want them to look at. So like Raven, however you say it, has like gray, white at the back, and then the outerwear that the model is wearing is maroon. So it's accented on the outerwear. When we open the website, you can see it right away. Like, great, nice, pretty. I love it. And then Zara here uses achromatic harmony, where it's like black, white, and gray to make it really clean looking and really pretty, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so that concludes our presentation on color theory and birds. So hopefully something will come up on trivia someday and you'll know the answer. And now we're going to open it up for any questions on birds or color theory. So if you have any questions.
Could you go over like how you utilize the color for like emotional responses or something like that?
So the question was, how would we use colors for emotional responses? Yes, we didn't really quite dive into it further, but with the color wheel, you can use the warm colors and the cool colors on the left and the right side. So usually warm colors, you think of sunny, so those kind of emotions would be warmer toned colors. And then if you want like a calm, meditative version or more nature, it would be kind of, you would move the color wheel a little bit so that it shares a little bit of the warm tones and the cool colors. With the harmonies, more so with the analogous harmony, you could use that for a meditative type. But if you want something super destructive, it's usually a warm color because it also emotes angerness. It depends on how you feel, but usually that's kind of how we base it off. You start off with the warm and the cold colors. I hope that answers.
I guess the question I'm thinking is like around trending. So I know with web design, I think a lot is around typography or layout or hover actions and things. Are you guys seeing future trends emerging that you are kind of leading people towards, or things that you're kind of recommending? I'm just kind of curious if there's things like on the horizon from a color theory that I don't come in contact with.
The only way I can respond, like I personally can respond to that, because again, this my pursuing this degree, it's a career change for me, and I am, like I said, I'm not necessarily color theory expert, but I know what I'm familiar with, and that's like if you are passionate about like a location or a food or the colors that are associated with that, like follow what evokes joy in you. So I know for me personally, like when I often get assignments, I definitely fall back on my previous training as a bird person, and that has worked. I'm not suggesting that for everyone, but I'm not sure, like as a like globally, other than to say do what evokes joy or pick trends or follow trends that resonate with you. Outside of that, I don't have any other advice.
It also depends on fashion and culture. We've returned back into, I guess, like the 1991 clothes trends. So like colors kind of repeat itself. So I think last era was like more pink and black and harmonies and stuff. And so if you see like Zara and everything, they trend it with that kind of color harmony and then base it off of that as well.
All right.
Yes.
What is a resource that has been very useful in learning more about color theory?
Would be those 3 websites with the color tools, and usually it's just lots of practice and going through it and having constructive feedback. I'm a freelance graphic designer, so usually going through that you can just learn from it, or going through the examples of websites to get inspiration.
With your experience as a graphic designer, when you're working with presenting designs to clients and getting feedback from them, if they're not responding to something, or if it's colored, like what's typically the first thing that you can kind of tweak or change based on, I don't like this, or make it pop? Like if you're getting kind of vague feedback from clients, what are some things that you can do specifically? Do you start with color, or do you start with something else to kind of iterate on design?
Good question. So the question was asking what, as a freelance graphic designer, how do I start off with picking the colors? I usually start off with black and white, because black and white is known to be of all colors, and it's easier for the client to focus on the text and the way the visual looks like. And then from that point I go on to phase 2 and provide them different versions of colors. So the colors of cool colors, warm colors, and give them different versions of that once they've picked out from the black and white what they want. So usually just have them focus on what they want for the symbol or the typeface that they want for their logo designs, and then go and move into the colored aspect of the palettes.
I have one more question. It's more about birds.
Yes, please.
Do you know why? Because like most other animals, I mean, I guess fish is an exception, but most other animals, they tend to have more, I guess, drab colors. Why is it that birds specifically tend to have such wide variety and brightness of colors?
Sex. It is, honestly. So you'll see different color palettes in different geographic locations, and across most species, it is the male's job to show off. It is the female's job to pick the male who shows off the best, and it also correlates with what the predator population is of that island, or area. So for example, New Guinea, you see, if you ever watched a documentary, maybe not necessarily on birds, but just nature, you'll see these birds of paradise where they do some crazy stuff with their feathers and with their bodies, where if they were to do that in, say, North America, they'd probably get eaten by a coyote or raccoon. So in areas that are more isolated, like islands, so New Guinea, Hawaii, I'm trying to think of other, like deep in the Amazon, well, not an island, but like deep in the Amazon, you're going to see these like really crazy colors and really crazy courtship behaviors, because they don't have to worry as much about being, as being obvious to predators. I do not have a good reason why some species are so sexually dimorphic and others are not. Like especially in the eclectus pair that I showed you, you have a very vibrant male, you have a very vibrant female. That is unique among birds. Why that developed, I don't know. It is an island species, so again, it probably has to do with that lack of predation. Because if you're very colorful and you're making a fool of yourself, you're probably going to get eaten. But if you're in an area, where there are no predators, you can evolve and get some flair going and get some dancing going. I mean, some of the dances, these are just the pictures, some of the dances these birds do is incredible, and the sounds they make, my gosh.
The sounds.
I'm not making any sound.
Okay.
But that's kind of a tangent, but does that answer your...
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good.
Okay. All right, it's 2:05, I think. Are
there any other questions?
Yeah, any last ones?
Well,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
And then